AskReddit. Subscribe for more videos.
Sex workers of Reddit, what's the weirdest kink a customer has asked you to fulfill? I was paid $200 to kick knee a customer in the balls till he came. Only took about 4 times to make him come. Did it a few times. He even paid me $500 when I went out clubbing to do it in a corner of the club. I was a cab driver for several years. Night shift. Ghetto. Loved that job. I had a regular escort who always requested me, probably because I didn't ask her for anything whilst driving her to her next job. She'd go up into an apartment, house, or hotel room and have me wait. Sometimes a full hour, but rarely over 15 minutes. I never argued because waiting and a return trip keeps the meter running longer. One time she came down after maybe 10 minutes. She looked half amused and half terrified. She said that the guy had her put on a muumuu and an old lady wig, then yell at him while he took a shit and edit for clarification. During, he jacked off. Fucking weird. Freud would have something to say about that guy, no doubt. Not one myself, but I knew a reporter who had done a story on the infamous red light area of Mumbai. One of the stories that stuck with all of us is of this one guy who'd turn up at one specific date every month with a duffel bag. Now you'd think he'd bring kinky devices with him to use on the sex worker, but instead, he'd bring a full set of traditional Indian wedding attire. The sex worker told the reporter that this specific customer would pay her whatever she asked, as long as she'd wear the wedding clothes. He would respectfully wait outside the room till she changed and then he would make her sit on the bed. He would pull up a chair, sit in front of her, and just look at her and weep for 2 hours straight. Then he'd leave, without laying as much as a finger on her. Turns out, he had lost his wife to some freak accident hours after they got married and it messed with him big time. One of the saddest stories I've heard, and it makes my heart ache immensely whenever I recount it. Had a roommate in college, 2000s, who did private adult videos by request only, basically expensive personalized video porn. She came home pretty bummed one day and I asked what was up. She said she had been paid $500 to put on an adult diaper and comically large baby bonnet and walk otherwise naked around a local college green space. The whole video was her walking around with her fingers in her mouth acting like a confused adult baby. At the end she was told to pee in the diaper and show the camera. When she thought she was done, the director asked if she wanted to poo in the diaper for $1,500 instead of $500, saying the client asked if it was possible. She declined immediately and the director was I guess okay with it. She was bummed she missed out on making an extra $1,000 because she had pooped before going to work. We both laughed so fucking hard. What a ridiculous thought. Done. If only I hadn't pooped before work I'd be making some real money. That's why I always poop at work, so I'm earning money whilst taking a dump. A client pays me to teach him how to blow his nose properly, making sure to say key phrases like blow it clear. Another one set up a fantasy scenario where I receive an expensive vibrator in the mail but when I open it, discover a tiny man that's stuck in it. He said what you don't know is that man was a factory worker that got stuck in the vibrator making it. I was obviously confused where he wanted me to go with this but suggested I should try using the vibrator with the man attached. Nope. The client replied I can't come unless you destroy it. This might be the weirdest one for me. Hahaha. These are great. Some people have such specific kinks. I had a piss baby once whose dialogue was so extensive. It was hard in the beginning because you could just hear him playing out past abuse. But I knew I could help him without judgment and he wouldn't get the same treatment from everyone. It was hard work because he wanted me to spank him with my bare hand at the end. Turns out it's hard to spank someone. Is a piss baby exactly what it sounds like or? Yep. Nothing particularly exciting to be honest. Kind of disappointing. Slightly more interesting requests included pretending to be married and having to be quiet so we didn't wake the kids. Armpit licking. Surprisingly common. Pretending to be a cat and meowing. Crawling around and drinking out of a bowl on the floor. Wearing pantyhose and being stretched and put into various yoga type poses while he sniffed me. Met more interesting folk in my day job I think. I feel obliged to mention the human toilet though. I never met him, but some of the other girls said there was a guy who would pay girls to poo in his mouth. Apparently they would line up outside his room to do it. Not judging, but I don't think that I could ever do that. I think I might qualify as a one-time sex worker. One night, after riding the subway home from work, a guy followed me off the train and offered to buy the shoes off my feet. He stammered through some nonsense about being a sneaker collector and paid me $450 in cash for my old, sweaty canvas Vans. Totally worth the 2-block walk home in my socks. Just going to point out that some vintage Vans can go for $1,000 or more to collectors. But yeah, he just probably wanted to nut in them. Not super crazy, but I had a guy approach me through Reddit and ask just to be able to give me money with no strings attached. There was a couple month period during which he would gradually send me money in multiple $15 payments spread throughout the day. Sometimes we'd text too. Sometimes we wouldn't message for a week, but he'd still send me money and quietly wait until I felt like talking. He liked when I ignored him, and if we talked it turned him on when I was mean. He ended up giving me about $1,500 without him ever asking for so much as a photo. Man, if anyone wants to do that with me, I'm willing AF. I love the lack of kink shaming here. Also, not a sex worker, but ex-military. Some guys are too shy about sharing even the most personal shit. One of my buddies had a kink with those horse girls that actually pretend to be horses. I mean, they gallop around on all four and jump over the obstacles. The whole 9 yards. He grew up on a ranch too. Said what's wrong with combining the best of both worlds? That sentence raises more questions than he'll ever need answered. I can hear the silence in that room. A customer had a fishing fetish. Got fisher outfits for some girls like a raincoat or some shit and brought a fishing rod, boots and all, and the girls had to act like they were fishing him while he was laying on the floor and moved like a fish. Craziest shit I heard, but whatever floats their boat, I guess. Sounds like you met a sketch comedy artist. One of my favorite customers at my restaurant is a SW, and she always tells me stories in exchange for a free boba. She's also the best tipper. The best story she's told me is a guy paying her $200 to just stand on his belly. Nothing else, just stand there fully clothed. Dude didn't even jerk off or anything. And he made an appointment every time she was in town. LOL. A friend, male, got asked this question in Cologne, Germany, in public mind you, roughly in these words: I like your Nike Air Maximum. I work out a lot. Look at my abs. Pulls up shirt. I'll lie down on the floor and I'll pay you 20 euros is to stand on my abs with those nice Air Maximum. That was one of the weirdest and funniest public interactions we ever had as a friend group. He had no fucking clue how to react to that, but he denied, of course. It was like 5 years ago and we still laugh about it. Not a sex worker personally, but I used to manage and bartend at gentlemen's clubs many moons ago. One night while I was tending the bar, one of the girls comes down to my bar and asks me for an empty beer mug. I give it to her. She runs off to the bathroom, then comes back out with it, full of urine. She then runs off to her customer, mug full of yellow liquid in hand. A bit later, she comes back with the mug, now empty, tries to give it back to me, and I tell her to throw it away. She does so, then proceeds to tell me that a customer paid her $300 for her to pee in that mug, and then he wanted her to watch him drink it, which he did. Beyond that, I saw guys come in, pay girls to clean mirrors and tables in the club, and they simply watched, though a few would even get up and help them with the cleaning they were paying them for. One guy would walk in, talk smack to every girl he could, and when one would finally get angry enough to slap him, he would pay them $100 on the spot. For your information, this dude was about 80 years old. Some guys would even come in at the start of a shift, would bring panties with them, and ask a few girls to wear the panties all day. They would then later show up at the end of the shift and pay the girls $100 and retrieve the used and worn panties. A lot of weird and oddball fetishes out there, but to each their own. All I could think about reading this is thank you for telling her to throw the mug away. Cammed for a bit. Kinks I dislike the most, and unfortunately one of the most common to encounter, were the doms who strolled into the chat already talking down to me, ordering me around and calling me pet names right off the bat, and then trying to keep that roleplay going during pay and kink negotiation, as if treating me like a sub would get them a better price and more access to my body. Aswads. Even the rape fantasy folks were more courteous about getting consent. Weirdest kink though, was contacted by a couple different guys who wanted me to close up record myself farting into a jar and capturing it, and then mail them the fart jar. I didn't realize fart jars were in such demand. Another guy wanted me to record myself in my car, fully clothed mind you, as if it was a normal day, with my seatbelt on. He was very adamant about car safety. The request was to pretend like my car was a stick shift that had just broken down, and I didn't understand how they worked. He wanted me to jiggle the shifter, bounce in place, fiddle with controls and shake the steering wheel and grumble at the car as if frustrated for a few minutes, and then reach over and start searching through my car's manual and reading aloud the terms as if very confused, and aloud wishing that I had a boyfriend who could help me. I got paid $200 for about 10 minutes of pretending to be confused while sitting in my car. Didn't even have to show a tit. He was very sweet and patient about the whole thing. 10/10 would film again. Pro tip to you all kinky people. Respecting boundaries and clear communication will get men girls to do some truly wild shit. This is pretty amazing, but also kinda sad. It sounds like his fantasy was to feel useful. My mother was a full-time dominatrix basically my whole life. I grew up in NYC and she would have her slaves come over and do all of our housework, get us groceries, etc. The most out there dude wasn't the grossest, or the most perverted. He was a Hasidic Jew who wanted to be a rug in our house. He would pay my mother to lay on our floor and occasionally she would step on him, but mostly he just wanted to be ignored. She also had a guy who would come over and pretend to be a chair. I've got stories on stories. A lot of men are weird as fuck lol. Edit. Hey everyone. Apparently I freaked some of you out. I'm okay. I am a totally functioning adult woman. I never stepped on the dudes or was involved in any BDSM. My mom started working out of the house when I was a teenager and I mostly heard things through the walls, or from my mom laughing about it later with her friends. I moved out when I was 17. Was it totally cool for my mom to make our dining room her dungeon? Maybe not, but she was a single mom doing her best and I'm no worse for wear. She had an alternative lifestyle and I accept that because she's my mom and I love her and that's that. I don't really wanna give any more info out publicly, but I would be happy to answer any questions any of you might have over private message. Thanks for all the concern. It was really sweet. I'm dude who did weird stuff during college to earn some extra cash. My job was to go to these afternoon parties organized by these filthy rich housewife and do catering service in our undies. Undies were provided by the secret friendship company. If they would like us, they would put in a currency note of 50/100 in our undies and take a drank peek of the good stuff. Once a woman asked me to assist her for personal work to earn more cash. I told her that I will not have sex for money. She told me that I will not be required to have sex. I got on board. She took me to her room, paid me $5K, just to watch her slowly undress and cry. I initially got scared as I thought she is framing me for rape, but she calmed me down and only asked me to watch. She slowly undressed herself while crying really loudly and then she lied on the floor naked bawling like a baby. There were actual tears and stuff. It was really sad for me, but $5K meant a lot during college days. Finally, she silently stood up, covered herself, went for a shower while asking me to leave immediately. She took my number and we made it a monthly routine. I was terrified every time she called me for the work, but I still did 7-8 sessions for the cash before I accepted that it's too weird for me. I couldn't sleep nicely for 2-3 nights after each experience. Not too fancy like other stuff here, but weird AF still. TLDR. Rich lady paid me to watch her undress while crying. Not me, but I heard this story from a friend of a friend who worked in a BDSM club. She had this client that would come in with a few bin bags full of nettles. It's a stinging plant for anyone not familiar. Wikipedia says they're not native to a lot of places. Anyway, then they put a tarpaulin down on the ground so they could roll him up in it with the nettles like a joint. Then she just kicked fuck out of him and apparently that's what got him off. Those things hurt so bad, what the fuck. I was a dom. There was this guy who was absolutely infamous. Literally everyone knew him and had done a session with him. If a dungeon got a new girl on staff, they'd call this guy to see if he'd scare her off. He was obsessed with teeth, but he was a very old guy, so his fetish got mixed in with typical old guy things, which meant that he rambled at length about dental insurance. He was so infamous that one day I actually stumbled upon a little article written about him. Here there were also rumors that he paid desperate addicts to actually pull their teeth. but who knows. On the flip side, I also stumbled upon an article about a different infamous guy who used to come around to the dungeons and give us all pedicures, and he was genuinely a lovely man. We called him Footsler Giorgio. I ordered many a drink perched atop his carpet back in the day, but actually, neither of these are weirdest. Not my client, but did see the guy, wearing reindeer antlers, like you might buy in the seasonal aisle of a drugstore around Christmas. Heard he liked to be called Rudolph. Seemed really off. Maybe mentally challenged. Wish I was making this up because it makes me sad to think about what would have given him such a fetish. I'm a dancer in a club and I love kinky guys. Other than the dumbs, I won't get into that whole thing. Kinky guys trend to be pretty passive and tip well. Mostly I meet foot guys, cuckolds, men who wear women's undergarments, and just overall subs who are open to whatever I'm into. After 15 years in the industry, I thought I'd heard it all. Then I met a guy who said he was into bones. As in, he bought a 45-minute room and just wanted to feel my skeleton. He was touching my collarbone and hips pretty hard. It wasn't the most comfortable dance ever, but he was so grateful to be acting out his fantasy and super respectful of me and my time. One of my favorite guys ever. Update. You all have really great questions and responses. I would love to answer meaningfully as I enjoy my work and love to talk about it. Just gonna take some time. I'm guessing that skeleton guy had a hard time in biology class. I think the strangest I've ever gotten was a man who had a huge fetish for Disney characters, and I'm not even talking just Disney princesses. He loved shit like Lilo and Stitch or Pooh Bear. He regularly paid me several hundred to dress up as his favorite characters and basically verbally abuse him. It was a sweet gig while it lasted, however strange. Nothing really surprises me anymore after that one. Edit. This blew up way more than I expected. I'll try and get to everyone's questions and messages eventually. Thank you all for being so kind and open-minded. Honestly, the idea of somebody shit-talking me while cosplaying a Disney character sounds so absurdly hilarious that I think it could actually be a fun time. Just not a legitimately sexy time. It actually is fun sometimes. I love being a dominatrix. It's just hard to stay in character and act sexy while I'm dressed up as Pooh Bear. After reading through this thread, I'm nowhere near the perverted bastard I thought I was. My fetish is to have sex with a woman. We found the real sadistic duck right here. I once attempted to get into selling feet pics years ago. This one guy messaged me and said he'd give me $200 if I was able to track down his identity in 30 minutes based off of a few clues he'd given me. He told me his state and job, and some surrounding area clues. Wasn't able to find him. Guess I'm not the next Sherlock Holmes. He was very heavily implying to me that he wanted to be humiliated to people he knew in real life and wanted me to have this power over him that I knew his real identity and could out him on his fetishes. Edit. I was unable to enter the feet pic selling community because, well, my feet are very small and neat. Perhaps cute to some people. Apparently the angle of them isn't pleasing to the eye and everyone wants very long angle toes, which I do not have. Edit again. I seriously got gold for regaling my failed attempt to enter the foot porn community by being a bad hacker and stalker, and I feel like I'm in a psychedelic dystopia. A guy hit me up for feet pics once, completely out of the blue. I know this basically bog standard, but I wasn't a sex worker, and whoever this guy was ended up hitting up about half of the guys at my college. 300-400 guys. It was all in the span of a week or so, and he offered good money per pic. All told, I heard he spent upwards of $5,000 trying to accumulate a collection of my college's male feet. Edit. $5,000 in total. He offered $5 to $20 per pic, I think. I know some dudes sent them for free just for the hell of it. I was kinda drunk when I got hit up, so I'm pretty sure I sent some in. I'm curious if they made their rounds on the internet now. Edit 2. Won't give too many details, but this was in the South within the past 8 years. Also, LMAO, I've already gotten people who want to see my feet. Hell, for $5,000 I'd take a picture of my butthole once a week for a year. I was camming and a guy wanted to start a pay-per-minute camming show. I agreed and just casually talked with him for a bit. Then to the weird part. He wanted me to lie in full view of the camera, completely still, like literally not move. I spent about an hour just laying completely still and making no sound. I have no idea what he got out of it. Maybe it was a power thing. Like he did it just cause he could? This is the most likely reason. People can get a feeling of power from any number of out of the norm situations. I was a receptionist in a massage parlor. Had a guy who would ring before attending to request that a girl take a cold bath before he got there. Apparently, he would ask them to lie completely still as if they were dead. If he caught them moving, he lost his mojo. Most of the girls only saw him once and refused him thereafter. Creepy. Edit. We also had a dungeon. Fuck knows what went on in there. I did not want to know. Edit 2. This is a then and now pic of the place. It's a pretty locally famous building and everyone knows what it is. The bottom right window is the dungeon. Top left was the schoolroom. I know you said you didn't want to know, but given my vast experience with role-playing games, I'm fairly confident that the dungeon contained a chest of loot guarded by goblins and or a dragon. Online only here. I had a man pay me $500 to sit on my feet in panties and a t-shirt and turn my back to the camera and play video games while ignoring the camera. Worth, edit since this blew up. It was via cam online so he wasn't there in person. Yes, I have below zero I bought it day one, but unfortunately my PC has way too low specs for it, so it sits and played in my Steam account. Thanks for all the fun comments guys. I did not expect this to go off like it did. You're all cool people. Make a video where I am sunbathing, and then I accidentally say the magic words, and then suddenly I get yucky slime dumped all over me. Did you ever wanna get slimed on Nickelodeon as a kid? Yeah, me too. Guess what? It's fucking gross. Feels like getting bathed on and it stinks like sour milk. That smell didn't leave my hair for a week. And if you're interested in what that looks like, someone posted a gif from the video on here a few years ago. Edit. Found the gif. OMFG. I admit your dedication to opening your mouth because I would not. Oh, I also had a guy out of his mind on Molly have me over for like 5 hours but had me arrive at midnight, then proceeded to dress me in every Halloween costume he had ever worn and photograph me in pirate stuff. LOTR costume and a wizard W, a large staff taller than I am. Guy WHO makes the radio's YouTube vids. Why didn't I get on the vid? I have hella upvotes and 2 awards. Kinda sad about it. I put on his wizard hat and robe. I cast level 3 eroticism. Duck it, no throwaway because I was 19 and I'm 32 now, so the time decay has expired. I was a high-end hooker from 17-20 years old. Me and a bunch of other girls I worked with, some underage, had a pimp. He was a gay black man named Misha and he passed himself off as a photographer. That's how I got wrapped in it all. He was very popular and had lots of money. He even had an art gallery in a very distinguished district in my area. A lot of people didn't know it, but a lot of the models in his art were underage. He treated us like family at first, like he was our protector. Anything we needed we came to him, and the girls became my best friends. We partied together, shopped together, emotionally supported each other when one of us would have a rough night with a bad client. He kept us on a steady diet of cocaine and money, you know, so we'd keep coming back for more and be loyal to him. Eventually the clouds rolled away and I saw him for what he was. We were his employees, not friends, and he didn't care about our safety, so I ran away. Anyways, during my run, my girls and I would be brought to these mansions filled with rich older men, most married, some famous or very well known for their success. I was too drugged up and blindsided to care who was who. That and I have a facial recognition issue, so I don't bother learning who's who. But I would randomly hear, oh he's a politician or he's a football player from one of the girls, so that's how I knew. I had one client, late 60s. We called him Hatman. To this day I am still not sure why we called him that. I always assumed he had made his big money owning a hat company. Who knows? I wasn't very smart back then. So Hatman had a very special interest. He would pay me to pretend I was his pet dog. I'd come over and he had a cage, a food and water bowl, my collar, leash. I wasn't allowed to speak, and I was usually naked. It would start with me laying at the foot of his bed or couch or on the floor. The more I immersed myself in the role, the more money he'd give me, and a lot of times it didn't even end in sex. I mean, he'd fondle me, what he called petting. but usually it was just me pretending to be his pet all night while he watched Sopranos until we fell asleep. I'm not gonna lie, compared to what other clients had me do, this was the easiest and kinda nicest work I had to do. He was nice to me. He pretended I was his adored pet. Compared to my upbringing, it was nice feeling cared for. In the morning I'd wake up still in my collar, in his bed, with a big wad of cash on the bedside table, and he'd be gone, off to do whatever millionaire businessmen do all day. I don't know what happened to him or if he's even still alive, but from time to time I wonder about Hatman. I also had a client who was a famous skater who made lots of money skating, I guess, and he was only like 22 years old. Anyway, he would have me come over and I had to pretend to be his girlfriend while his actual girlfriend would dress up like a maid and clean the house around us while we pretended to do normal couple things like dinner at the table or sit at couch and watch a movie. Then she'd bend over in her maid skirt or do something sexual towards me or him, and that would trigger the threesome. But it always had to start like that, lol. Also, he'd encourage me to belittle her and degrade her about her terrible cleaning job around the house so he could punish her. Fun couple. I've only sex worked once when I didn't have enough money for a night out. Guy paid me £250 for me to sit on his back naked for 3 hours. He didn't do anything, just laid there. No conversation whilst I watched TV. I felt like I'd ripped him off, but he was very appreciative. There's plenty of fetishes I don't indulge but understand how people get off. But I struggle to understand what he was getting out of it. To each their own. Have you considered that the man had a back pain and needed a certain amount of pressure onto a single spot on his back to cure it, and he also has the ability to weight someone just by looking at them, therefore knowing who would provide the perfect pressure? High chance that is not real, but who would know? It's a possibility, but I'm not sure why we'd both need to be naked for that, and a chiropractor would be cheaper. I'm no sex worker, but I did know a guy who would roll a layer of tissue paper under his foreskin when he had sex. Was an awkward night when his girlfriend revealed she had to remove dried bits of tissue paper from her anus. Well, at least cleanup must be quicker for him. In a special massage place, friend of a friend of a friend told me that one of her customer comes in regularly to get his ass cheek scratched for 1 hour. That sounds heavenly. I'd like that, tbh. Who wouldn't? I'm not a sex worker, but the weirdest request I've had was on Reddit from a guy offering me $50 an hour to crush mealworms and insects with my feet. Oh, and the bugs would be supplied to me. Another time, a guy offered me $200 just to show up and meet him. Didn't have to talk or stay, just collect money and leave. Which was obviously sketchy as fuck, and I didn't go. I'm an erotica writer, and I've had some strange requests for commissions over the years. I've written about the guy who wanted to be sounded by a Hot Wheels car before, but there have been a bunch of times when people have asked for things that have been unusual. I had one guy who was really into whatever a bird furry is, a feathery, I suppose, and asked for a story about getting a hand job from someone with an eagle claw. I pointed out that that would technically be a foot job, and he never got back to me. There was also one guy who wanted me to edit his writing and just berate him for all his mistakes in the comments. Basically, he wanted a sort of Microsoft Word student-teacher roleplay thing where I'd correct all his errors and tell him what a stupid little boy he was and how he was going to be a failure as a writer and no one would ever read his stuff. I didn't take the job in the end, because it felt a little too close to just talking this guy off rather than writing a story, and I was in a relationship at the time, and B, he offered about 2/3 of what my then editing rate was. If he wanted an editing job and to get off from it, my logic went, he should have been paying more, not less. There have also been a couple of people who've asked for writing based on an image prompt, which is fine, but usually it's a sexy woman or a particularly fetishy image. You know, latex, bondage, all that good stuff. One guy sent me a picture of a chair, just a chair, by itself. It was a very nice chair, but I had to check with him before I wrote it in case I'd missed something about the whole transaction. In the end, I wrote a very nice little piece about a woman bent over it, waiting for her dom to come home and fuck her. Turned out he wasn't a chair fetishist, he just liked my work and wanted to see what I'd come up with. Everybody fucks funny. I love how you don't want to sound rude when talking about the chair. It was a very nice chair. This is the definition of no kink shaming. Face with tears of joy. It was genuinely a nice chair. I mean, If you were going to jerk off to a chair, that chair would have to be a strong contender for being the sort of chair you jerk off to. It was that sort of a chair. I used to sell a friend of mine sleeping pills. She had a client who liked them being injected to his dick and tried to fuck her before he went to sleep. Would take about 10 to 15 minutes before he crashed out. She was always paid up front and she would leave when he fell asleep. Well, that's one way to flip drugs. I could never imagine getting injected into the dick. Saw this thing years ago, was something like 101 ways to die. This guy used a dirty heroin needle to the dick and it got infected and basically fell off and then he died. Duck that.
If you enjoyed this video, please hit the thumbs up button and comment below letting me know. It helps the channel and lets me create more content just like this. If you do like this type of content, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss an upload.